The snow fell like silver dust against the glowing facade of the Ritz-Carlton Beverly Hills. Christmas lights shimmered across the palm trees, and the valet line was crowded with luxury cars, Mercedes, Bentleys, a few Teslas humming quietly in the cold night air. Among them, a single woman stood by the entrance, her red coat barely hiding the curve of her pregnant belly. That woman was 30A. She kept glancing at the main doors, hoping her husband would come back out. Jonathan Mills, her husband of 4 years, had promised this trip would be their new beginning. Just one more deal, he'd said. After that, everything will change for us. Emily believed him. She believed every word, every late night, every whispered phone call that he said was business. But tonight, as she watched him walk inside with another woman, Victoria Langford, the powerful CEO whose face was on every finance magazine cover, Emily felt her world collapse in silence. The sight burned into her memory. Jonathan, in a tailored black tuxedo, Victoria's diamond-clad hand resting on his arm. They didn't even look back. The valet, a young man holding an umbrella, hesitated. "Ma'am, do you want me to call someone? You look cold." Emily shook her head. Her breath came out in short, visible clouds. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "He'll be right back," she whispered, mostly to herself. Inside the hotel, laughter echoed through the glass doors. The Christmas gala was in full swing. Music, champagne, the soft chime of crystal glasses. Emily pressed her gloved hand against her stomach, feeling the small kick from the baby. "It's okay," she whispered. "Mommy's fine." But the words sounded empty. Her phone vibrated. It was a notification, an email from Jonathan. One line only: "Don't wait for me tonight. We'll talk in the morning." Her knees weakened. She leaned against a marble column, the cold seeping through her gloves. Around her, couples posed for photos under the twinkling lights. No one noticed the woman standing alone in the snow. A black limousine pulled up to the curb. Through the tinted glass, she saw Jonathan's reflection, laughing beside Victoria. The door closed. The driver nodded, and the car slid into traffic, red taillights fading into the distance. Emily's breath caught. For a moment, she thought she might faint, but instead, she just stood there, letting the snow cover her hair and coat. The air smelled of perfume and exhaust. She had never felt so invisible. Someone nearby took a quick video on their iPhone, just a curious passerby capturing the scene of a glamorous woman alone outside a luxury hotel. They didn't know that the woman they filmed had just lost everything. Her phone slipped from her hand, landing softly in the snow. The screen lit her face for a second, showing the reflection of a woman she barely recognized, eyes red, cheeks pale, mascara bleeding down like dark rivers. She bent to pick it up, but her vision blurred. For the first time in years, Emily Carter didn't know where to go. No taxi, no plan, no one waiting for her. She looked up at the sky. Snow kept falling, slow and silent, wrapping Beverly Hills in an unreal calm. The music from the gala drifted faintly through the doors, joyful, distant, cruel. And then, amid the noise and light, Emily whispered the only question that mattered. Why wasn't I enough? Across the street, someone was watching her from a parked car. That unseen watcher quietly started the engine and followed the limousine, unaware that what he was about to witness would change everything. Before Beverly Hills and the snow, Emily Carter's life had been built on something simpler: hope. She grew up in a small town outside Boston, the kind of place where everyone knew the color of your front door and your mother's maiden name. Her parents ran a cozy bookstore on Main Street. Every night, the smell of coffee and old paper filled the house. That was where Emily learned to dream. She had been the first in her family to graduate from college. Her degree in marketing earned her a job offer from a Manhattan tech startup when she was just 24. She packed her life into a U-Haul, said goodbye to her sleepy town, and headed to the city that never slept. Manhattan was everything she hoped for and more: fast, brilliant, ruthless. But Emily kept her kindness, her curiosity, her belief that love could exist even in skyscrapers made of glass and steel. That was where she met Jonathan Mills. It was 2018, at a tech networking event in a Fifth Avenue rooftop lounge. Jonathan had been charming, impossibly confident, wearing that same Mont Blanc watch he'd later used to check his phone during their arguments. He told her he admired her energy, that she was too bright for small rooms. For Emily, it felt like destiny. He made her laugh, made her feel seen in a city that often didn't notice anyone. They married 2 years later in Central Park. It was a small ceremony, but to Emily, it felt like a promise carved in stone. She believed they were partners in everything. When Jonathan suggested moving to Los Angeles for a new business opportunity, she didn't hesitate. She left her position at her beloved firm in Manhattan, packed their apartment, and followed him across the country. "We'll build something bigger together," he had said. The first months in Beverly Hills were strange. The air smelled different, sweet but artificial. Their new house, perched above Sunset Boulevard, had a view of the city lights but never felt like home. Jonathan was gone most nights. He claimed investors demanded late dinners, endless meetings. Emily spent her evenings on the couch, one hand on her growing belly, the other scrolling through old photos on her iPhone. Her parents' bookstore, her wedding day, a snowy night in New York when Jonathan had kissed her under Christmas lights. But now, those memories hurt. They felt like someone else's life. Sometimes she'd call her best friend Lisa Nguyen in Los Angeles just to hear a familiar voice. Lisa would tease her gently, saying, "You sound like a ghost haunting your own home." Emily laughed, but her laugh never reached her eyes. As months passed, she began noticing little things: perfume that wasn't hers on Jonathan's shirts, new suits paid with a company card, messages that disappeared when she entered the room. Yet, she kept believing. Because love for Emily was loyalty even when it hurt. Her mother once told her, "When a woman loves, she forgives before she understands." Emily carried that sentence like a prayer. Until the night everything broke. The night before Christmas Eve, Jonathan came home late, reeking of champagne. He didn't notice the dinner she'd made. He didn't ask about the baby. He just said, "Tomorrow's important. Don't come to the gala. Investors only." That was the first time she saw it. The cold distance in his eyes, the final curtain falling between them. And so, when the snow began falling outside the Ritz-Carlton the next night, Emily already knew something inside her was dying. But what she didn't know was that pain, once it burns deep enough, can create something unstoppable. In the silence of that night, a different part of Emily began to wake up, one that would soon make the world remember her name. The night before Christmas Eve carried a strange quiet across Beverly Hills. The sky above the hills was clear, the city below glowing like a sea of diamonds. From the window of their modern glass home on Mulholland Drive, Emily Carter stood watching the lights flicker in the distance. Somewhere out there, her husband Jonathan Mills was closing a deal. He had promised to be home early, but it was already past 11. The dinner table was still set. Candles burned low, half melted, beside untouched plates of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes she had made from an old family recipe. The house smelled like rosemary and hope, the kind of hope that had been fading more each day. Her phone buzzed once. A text from Jonathan. "Running late. Don't wait up." No apology. No heart. Just words. Cold, efficient. Emily sat down slowly, her hands instinctively cradling her stomach. She was almost 7 months pregnant. The baby kicked lightly, a reminder that she wasn't truly alone, even if the silence tried to convince her otherwise. She reached for her MacBook Air and opened the shared calendar Jonathan always insisted they keep. His next 2 days were blocked out with vague entries. Investor Gala, Ritz-Carlton, private dinner, Langford Capital, and follow-up meeting. She frowned. She had seen the name Langford before. On the glossy envelopes, on the champagne bottles he brought home after successful meetings. Scrolling through her messages, she found one photo from a week earlier. Jonathan at an office Christmas party, standing beside a tall woman in a silver dress. The caption from a colleague read, "Power couple goals." The woman's name tagged below, Victoria Langford. Emily closed the laptop gently. For a moment her mind tried to protect her, inventing excuses. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was just tired. But deep down, a quiet part of her already knew. The clock hit midnight. Beverly Hills looked peaceful, but inside her chest was a storm. She walked to the nursery they'd been decorating together. The soft white crib stood by the window, a small plush bear waiting inside. She had picked it from a boutique on Rodeo Drive, the same day Jonathan forgot their anniversary dinner. Her phone lit up again, this time with a notification from Instagram. Someone had posted a photo tagged at the Langford Foundation Gala. Emily's pulse quickened. She opened it. There, among the polished guests and golden chandeliers, was Jonathan, his hand resting comfortably on Victoria's lower back, both smiling for the cameras. The caption read, "Jonathan Mills and Victoria Langford at tonight's exclusive Christmas gala. Power Partnership of the Year." Her hand trembled. She felt heat rise to her face, followed by a cold wave of disbelief. She zoomed in, her heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the faint holiday music playing from her Echo speaker. He was supposed to be home. He was supposed to be hers. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. Emily pressed her hand over her stomach and whispered, "I'm sorry, sweetheart." She stood there for a long time, staring at that photo. Outside, a gentle wind pushed against the glass. She could see her reflection, pale, tired, still trying to believe. At 1:07 a.m., Jonathan finally came home. His tuxedo smelled like champagne and perfume. He didn't look guilty, just distant. He set his keys on the counter, loosened his tie, and muttered, "You're still awake?" Emily's voice cracked. "Who's Victoria Langford?" He froze for half a second, then forced a laugh. "She's an investor." "Don't start." But she saw it, the flicker of fear in his eyes, gone as quickly as it came. He brushed past her toward the bedroom, saying, "Go to sleep. Tomorrow's important." Emily stood motionless in the living room, watching the man she once trusted disappear behind the door. The candles had burned out. Only smoke remained, curling upward like ghosts of the life she thought she had. And somewhere deep inside her heart, something began to break and rebuild itself in the same breath. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in gold and glitter. The Ritz-Carlton Beverly Hills glowed like a palace under strings of crystal lights. A red carpet stretched from the valet circle to the grand entrance, where photographers snapped endless flashes at the city's richest and most admired. Tonight was the annual Langford Foundation Gala, a night for power, prestige, and perfectly polished lies. Inside their hilltop home, Emily Carter sat on the edge of the bed, watching her husband button his tuxedo. Jonathan Mills looked every bit the ambitious entrepreneur, his hair slicked back, his Mont Blanc watch gleaming beneath his cuff. He smelled of Dior Sauvage, strong, sharp, almost arrogant. "Do you really have to go alone?" she asked softly. Her voice carried the weight of all the nights she'd waited, all the dinners gone cold. Jonathan glanced at her reflection in the mirror. "It's not that kind of event, Em. Investors only." She looked down at her belly. "I'm not asking to dance. I just don't want to spend Christmas Eve alone." He sighed, adjusting his cufflinks. "You won't be alone. I'll be back before midnight." But both of them knew he wouldn't. She stood, walked over, and touched his sleeve. "If there's something you're not telling me." He pulled away. "Don't start with the drama, Emily. You're emotional because of the pregnancy." Those words hit harder than any shout could. He didn't even meet her eyes when he left. Moments later, the sound of the Mercedes S-Class engine echoed down the driveway, fading into the night. Emily stood by the window, hands pressed against the cold glass, watching the taillights vanish. Her breath fogged the pain. Across the city, the gala was already in motion. Inside the grand ballroom, chandeliers sparkled over rows of guests sipping champagne. The Langford logo shimmered on a massive digital screen. Victoria Langford stood near the center, draped in a silver gown that caught the light with every movement. She was breathtaking and dangerous. When Jonathan arrived, photographers swarmed. "Mr. Mills, over here. One photo with Miss Langford, please." He hesitated for half a second, but Victoria slid her arm through his and smiled for the cameras. "Relax, darling," she whispered. "Tonight, you're the star." Flash. Click. Flash. The image captured. Jonathan Mills and Victoria Langford, hands intertwined, smiles perfectly aligned. Back at home, Emily's phone buzzed on the nightstand. A notification from a celebrity news page flashed across the screen. Langford Gala 2024 highlights. Victoria Langford arrives with rising tech CEO Jonathan Mills. She froze. Her thumb hovered over the screen. The image loaded, and there it was, Jonathan's unmistakable grin, the same one that used to belong to her. Her pulse quickened. She opened Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. The same photo, the same headline. It felt like the whole world was watching her husband fall in love with someone else. She turned off her phone, grabbed her coat, and stepped outside. The air was cold, the streets quiet. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay there anymore. When she reached the Ritz-Carlton, snow had begun to fall. rare for Los Angeles, soft flakes floating like ash under the golden lights. She saw the crowd of guests leaving their cars, the paparazzi flashing like starlight. Then she saw him. Jonathan stood by the hotel entrance, his hand on Victoria's back as they greeted other investors. He laughed, loud, free, as if nothing in the world could touch him. Emily's heart cracked in slow motion. She stood at the edge of the valet line, unnoticed, her breath visible in the cold air. Every sound, the laughter, the camera clicks, the music, felt like a knife twisting deeper. A valet approached. "Ma'am, are you attending the gala?" She shook her head. "No," she whispered. "Not anymore." The limousine door opened. Jonathan helped Victoria inside. The snow thickened, catching the lights in a soft blur. Emily took one last look at the man she once loved. Then the car drove away, leaving her standing alone in the snow, her red coat glowing under the streetlight like a final heartbeat fading into the night. From across the street, a camera flash went off. Someone had just captured the moment the world would never forget. Snow in Beverly Hills wasn't supposed to happen, but that night it did. Flakes floated through the palm trees, melting as they touched the marble steps of the Ritz-Carlton. Emily Carter stood there, her red coat soaked, her hair damp and sticking to her cheeks. The world around her glimmered with music and light, but inside her, everything was collapsing quietly. People passed by in laughter and diamonds, clutching champagne flutes and gift bags, stepping into black cars that whisked them toward warmth. No one looked twice at the woman standing barefoot in the slush, her heels abandoned somewhere on the curb. The cold bit through her stockings. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through her phone, staring at the photo of Jonathan and Victoria smiling for the cameras. Her chest tightened. The baby kicked, as if to remind her she couldn't fall apart. Not yet. A valet approached gently. "Ma'am, are you okay? Should I call someone?" Emily's voice cracked. "No, thank you, I'm fine." The lie slipped out too easily. He nodded uncertainly, then moved on to open the door for another Rolls-Royce. Emily's reflection caught in the glass of the revolving doors. Eyes swollen, mascara smudged, the faint outline of a woman she no longer recognized. The snow thickened, blanketing the sidewalks and turning the city into a dream too cruel to wake from. She sank onto a nearby bench beneath a glittering wreath. Clutching her phone was a lifeline. She opened her messages again, rereading Jonathan's last text. "Don't wait for me tonight." It echoed in her head until the words lost meaning. A soft sob escaped her. A soft sob escaped her. She pressed a hand over her mouth, not to hide her tears, but to muffle the sound of her breaking. Somewhere nearby, a street musician played a slow version of Silent Night. The tune drifted through the cold air, tender and haunting. Emily stared at the lights, the perfect symmetry of the holiday decorations, and wondered how the world could stay so beautiful when hers had turned to ashes. Her phone buzzed again. Another headline notification. Langford Capital's CEO, Victoria Langford, celebrates Christmas with business partner Jonathan Mills. The photo was everywhere now, the caption calling them the new power duo. The power duo. That's what she and Jonathan used to be. She whispered under her breath, "You promised me forever." The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know, sweetheart," she said softly. "We'll be okay." She needed somewhere to go, but every name in her contact list felt distant. Friends from New York, colleagues she hadn't spoken to in months. She hovered over Lisa Ngoyen's name, her best friend who'd moved to Los Angeles 2 years earlier. Her thumb trembled. Before she could call, a stranger's voice interrupted. "Miss, are you sure you don't need help?" It was the limousine driver who'd seen her earlier, an older man with kind eyes. He held out a small towel. "You're freezing." Emily managed a faint smile. "I'll be all right." He hesitated, then said quietly, "Sometimes people forget that even the strongest hearts can shatter. Take care of yourself, ma'am." He returned to his car and drove away, leaving her in silence again. Emily sat there until her body went numb. The snow had stopped falling. Her phone battery flickered red. She looked up at the hotel one last time, at the grand windows glowing with laughter and betrayal. Then she whispered a promise to herself. So softly it vanished into the night air. "You left me to break, but I will rise again." She stood, straightened her coat, and began walking down the empty boulevard toward the faint lights of the city. Far behind her, a camera shutter clicked once more. The photo that would later go viral, the beginning of her rebirth. The morning after Christmas was cruelly bright. The California sun melted the thin layer of snow that had fallen overnight, leaving behind damp streets and glittering puddles. Emily Carter woke to the sound of distant traffic and the weight of reality pressing against her chest. She had fallen asleep on the couch, still wearing her red coat, her phone lying dead beside her. Her head ached, her eyes burned from the tears she hadn't realized she cried. The house was silent, too silent. No Jonathan, no apology, no trace of the man she once called her husband. Only the faint echo of his laughter from the night before, replaying like a cruel memory. She stood slowly, her back stiff, and looked around the living room. Everything was perfectly in place. The marble floors gleamed, the Christmas tree twinkled with white lights, the unopened gifts beneath it mocking her with ribbons and lies. She saw the silver bracelet Jonathan had given her last year resting on the coffee table. She picked it up and turned it in her hand, the engraving still clear. Forever, J&E. Forever had lasted less than 5 years. Her reflection caught in the window glass. Her hair was tangled, her face pale. She looked fragile, like the version of herself that Jonathan had built, polite, accommodating, endlessly forgiving. But as she stared, something shifted behind her eyes. There was no more space for disbelief, only the hollow that comes before rebuilding. The doorbell rang. For a second, her heart jumped. Maybe he'd come back. Maybe he'd explain everything. But when she opened the door, it was Lisa Nguyen, her best friend from college. Lisa stood there in oversized sunglasses and a beige coat, holding 2 Starbucks cups. "I saw the photos, Em," she said softly. "You didn't think I'd let you go through this alone, did you?" Emily blinked, stunned. "How did you?" "The internet talks fast, so does my assistant." Lisa stepped inside and handed her a latte. "You need caffeine, a shower, and someone to remind you that Jonathan Mills isn't God." For the first time in 2 days, Emily laughed, a small, shaky sound, but real. "You came all the way here?" Lisa shrugged. "I live 15 minutes away. You just never called." They sat together on the couch. Emily told her everything. The texts, the gala, the snow, the humiliation. Lisa listened without interrupting, her hand resting on Emily's arm. When Emily finally stopped, Lisa said quietly, "Then it's over. Let him drown in his own vanity. You're not chasing him. You're starting over." Emily looked down at her stomach. "With a baby. Alone." Lisa smiled faintly. "Not alone. You've got me. And soon, you'll have someone stronger than both of us combined." Emily felt tears sting her eyes again, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from gratitude. After Lisa left that afternoon, Emily showered, changed into clean clothes, and plugged in her dead phone. Messages flooded in. Sympathy from old coworkers, curiosity from gossip reporters, one unread voicemail from Jonathan she couldn't bring herself to play. Instead, she opened her Kindle app and searched for something to steady her mind. The first title that appeared, "Women Who Run with the Wolves." She downloaded it and began to read. The words felt like a mirror, stories of women who lost everything and rebuilt from ashes. Every line lit a small spark inside her. That night, she sat by the window with her latte gone cold, the city lights stretching endlessly below. For the first time, she didn't feel like a ghost. She felt like someone standing at the edge of a new beginning. She whispered to herself, "He broke me to set me free." And in that silence, something powerful began to take shape. A quiet, determined strength that no betrayal could ever erase. From her bedroom, Emily opened her laptop and began typing the first draft of her new life. 3 days after Christmas, the sky above Beverly Hills turned gray. Emily Carter sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, a half-finished cup of coffee beside her. The house was quieter than ever, except for the faint ticking of the clock. Jonathan hadn't returned. No messages, no apology, just silence. She should have been resting. The doctor had warned her to avoid stress, but rest felt impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jonathan's hand resting on Victoria Langford's back, saw the glint of her silver gown, heard the laughter. It looped like a cruel movie she couldn't stop. Emily opened her MacBook again. She wasn't sure why, but something in her gut told her to look. Jonathan's company email was still logged in on their shared iCloud. She hesitated, then clicked. A folder labeled Langford Project Private sat at the top. Her fingers hovered over the mouse. She told herself she just wanted closure, But deep down, she wanted truth. The folder opened. Inside were dozens of files, contracts, proposals, financial statements. She clicked one titled Meridian Acquisition Draft. As the document loaded, her stomach dropped. It detailed a merger between Jonathan's startup and Langford Capital, with Victoria Langford listed as majority owner. Jonathan's name appeared below hers, under equity partner, 15%. 15%. He had traded everything, including her, for 15%. Emily scrolled further and saw another document, an email chain between Jonathan and Victoria. Her eyes moved across the words, each one cutting deeper. Once she signs the separation papers, we can move ahead publicly. She doesn't suspect anything yet. After New Year's, I'll make it official. Her hand flew to her mouth. Separation papers. He had already planned to leave her before Christmas, before the gala, before the snow. Her heart pounded. She clicked on another folder, personal. Inside was a subfolder named Photos. Most were of business events, but one stopped her cold. It was a photo from their own living room, Jonathan and Victoria sitting close together on the couch she was now sitting on. Emily zoomed in. A half-empty bottle of wine sat beside them. Her favorite mug was in the background. It wasn't a business meeting, it was betrayal at home. Tears blurred her vision, but anger burned through them. "You used me," she whispered. "You used everything we built." She slammed the laptop shut, her pulse racing. But after a moment, she reopened it. Not to cry this time. To copy every file. She plugged in her external drive and began downloading everything. Each document, each email, each picture. A digital record of deceit. When it was done, she stared at the blinking light on the drive. It looked small, almost fragile, but she knew it held power. Proof. Her phone rang suddenly, jolting her. The caller ID read unknown number. For a moment she thought it might be Jonathan. She hesitated, then answered. "Emily Carter?" A woman's voice asked. "This is Karen from the Beverly Times. I'm reaching out about the photos from the Ritz-Carlton Gala. You're trending online? Would you like to comment?" Emily's throat tightened. "No," she said quietly. "Not yet." When the call ended, she looked around the house again. The perfect furniture, the designer art Jonathan had bought to impress people, not because he loved it. It all felt hollow now. That night, she sent Lisa a message. "I found something. You were right about him." Lisa replied almost instantly, "Save everything. Don't act yet. I might know someone who can help you." Emily looked at the glowing screen, the reflection of herself staring back. Her pulse slowed. The fear was still there, but now it mixed with something new. Resolve. She whispered to the quiet house, "You wanted to erase me, Jonathan, but you just gave me the evidence I needed." She placed the hard drive carefully in her desk drawer, locked it, and turned off the lights. Outside, a black car idled on the street, the same one that had followed the limousine that night. Its driver watched the house, camera in hand, capturing the next chapter of her transformation. 2 days after Emily found the hidden files, Los Angeles was soaked in winter rain. The sky was the color of steel, the streets reflecting the glow of red taillights. Inside a small cafe on Melrose Avenue, the smell of espresso and rain mingled with quiet jazz. Emily sat in the corner booth, her coat draped over the seat, a steaming latte cupped in her hands. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jonathan's name beside Victoria Langford's on those documents. But she wasn't here to cry. She was here because Lisa Nguyen had texted, "We need to talk, alone." When Lisa walked in, heads turned. She carried herself with effortless confidence, her beige trench coat perfectly tailored, her Mont Blanc pen clipped neatly in her pocket. Emily forced a smile, but Lisa's face was serious. "Are you okay?" Lisa asked, sliding into the booth. Emily nodded weakly. "As okay as a woman who found her husband's secret merger with his mistress can be." Lisa exhaled. "Then it's time I tell you something." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" Lisa leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I know Victoria Langford. Not just from headlines. I used to work for her." Emily froze. "What?" "She was one of my biggest clients," Lisa continued. 3 years ago, she hired my firm to redesign her office at Langford Capital. That's how I met her, and how I met Jonathan." Emily's stomach turned. "You knew him before?" Lisa shook her head quickly. "Barely. He was just another name on her guest list. But I saw things back then, things I didn't want to believe. Victoria has a habit of collecting people. She finds talented men, promises them power, then keeps them on a leash. When I saw your photos together, I thought maybe she'd changed. Clearly she hasn't. Emily stared at the rain sliding down the window. She collected my husband. Yes, Lisa said softly. And now she's using him for something bigger. That merger isn't just about business, it's about control. She's setting Jonathan up to take the fall for financial fraud. It's what she does. She did it once before in Chicago, but the case vanished after a payout. Emily's heart pounded. How do you know all this? Lisa hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a thin envelope. Because I've been following her for months. I'm part of a private investor group investigating her. I didn't tell you sooner because I didn't want to drag you into it. But after the photos, I realized you're already in the middle of her game. Emily opened the envelope. Inside were printouts of bank statements, press clippings, and one familiar photo. Victoria at a gala, arm in arm with another man, years before Jonathan. The caption read, Langford Capital linked to insider trading probe. Emily's voice shook. So she's using him, and he doesn't even know. Lisa nodded. Exactly, and if this deal goes through, he'll take the blame, not her. Emily leaned back, staring at the papers. Her mind raced. All the anger she'd felt began to twist into something sharper. Then we stop her. Lisa smiled faintly. That's why I called you. I have a contact at the Beverly Times, someone who's been digging into Langford for years. If we can leak the right files, it'll destroy her empire before she destroys anyone else. Emily glanced down at her latte, the steam curling like a whisper of destiny. You're asking me to expose both of them? Lisa met her eyes. I'm asking you to take your power back. Outside, thunder rumbled over Los Angeles. Emily looked out at the storm, the city blurred behind raindrops. For the first time since Christmas Eve, she felt something close to purpose. She picked up her phone and sent one message. Meet me tonight. We end this together. As Lisa watched her friends stand, she knew the quiet, heartbroken woman from the snow was gone. In her place stood someone fierce, someone unafraid. In the reflection of the cafe window, lightning flashed. 2 women, 1 mission, and the storm just beginning to rise. That night, the rain had stopped, but the city still glistened under the streetlights. Emily Carter drove slowly through Beverly Hills, her wipers brushing away the last drops of water on the windshield. Beside her, on the passenger seat, sat a small silver flash drive, the one that held every secret Jonathan Mills had tried to hide. She parked outside Lisa Nguyen's apartment, a sleek building overlooking Wilshire Boulevard. When Lisa opened the door, she was barefoot, her hair tied back, surrounded by open laptops and stacks of documents. The room looked like a war room disguised as a designer loft. Come in, Lisa said. We have work to do. Emily stepped inside and handed her the flash drive. Everything's here. Every contract, every email, every photo. Lisa plugged it into her MacBook Pro, eyes scanning the folders. Good. Now we build a timeline. If we can prove Victoria's been funneling investor money through shell companies, the Beverly Times will have everything they need to expose her. Emily sat down, her fingers clasped tightly together. And Jonathan? Lisa paused. If he's part of it, the fallout will hit him too. Are you ready for that? Emily looked at the city through the window, her reflection layered over the skyline. He made his choice when he left me in the snow. I'm done protecting him. Lisa nodded slowly. Then let's start. For the next few hours, the 2 women worked in silence, their screens glowing in the dim light. Emily's heart pounded as she scrolled through spreadsheets filled with numbers that didn't add up, transactions sent to offshore accounts under coded names, Langford Consulting, Meridian Holdings, and one called JM Ventures. Her chest tightened. That's him, she whispered. He's in deeper than I thought. Lisa glanced at her. He's probably trapped. Victoria keeps her partners close until she's ready to feed them to the wolves. Emily clenched her jaw. Then maybe it's time the wolves turn on her. At midnight, they took a break. Lisa poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Emily. To new beginnings, she said softly. Emily smiled faintly. And to women who stop waiting for apologies. They clinked glasses. The glow from Lisa's monitor flickered across their faces as the clock struck 1. Emily noticed an unread email in Jonathan's inbox, time-stamped earlier that evening. The subject line read, Langford Directive, Urgent. She opened it carefully. Inside, Victoria's words stared back at her. Everything moves after New Year's Eve. Final signatures at the gala, Once the press release goes live, no turning back. Emily felt her pulse quicken. She's launching it at the New Year's Eve gala. That's 2 nights from now. Lisa leaned forward. Then that's when we hit her. Emily turned to her, eyes fierce. Publicly? Lisa nodded. If we leak this before the gala, she'll bury it. But if we wait until she's in front of every investor, every reporter, she can't hide. She'll crumble under her own spotlight. Emily sat back, letting the idea sink in. The thought of standing in the same room as Jonathan and Victoria again made her stomach twist. But so did the idea of letting them win. She exhaled slowly. Okay, we do it at the gala. Lisa opened a new folder labeled Operation Firebird. Inside, she began organizing the files by date, attaching Victoria's emails, bank transfers, and Jonathan's private notes. We'll send this packet to the Beverly Times 5 minutes before the gala starts. They'll break the story live. Emily's gaze hardened. And I'll make sure they see me when it happens. Lisa looked up. What do you mean? Emily stood, her hand resting on her belly. I'm not hiding anymore. When the truth explodes, I'll be there, in person. Let them all see the woman they thought was broken. Lisa grinned slowly. Then you're ready? Emily turned toward the window again, watching the lights stretch across the city like veins of gold. The same city that once made her feel small now felt like a stage waiting for her return. Outside, lightning flashed across the horizon, and for the first time, Emily didn't flinch. She smiled. The storm was hers now, and she was about to strike back. 2 days remained until the New Year's Eve gala. The night Victoria Langford planned to unveil her empire, and the night Emily Carter would take it all down. The sun rose over Beverly Hills, painting the hills in soft gold. Inside Lisa Noyan's apartment, Emily stood in front of a full-length mirror, staring at the woman reflected back. Her once tired eyes looked sharper now. The swelling from sleepless nights had faded. Determination had taken its place. She still carried the quiet grace she'd always had, but beneath it, a new kind of strength burned. Lisa appeared behind her, holding a sleek black garment bag. It's time, she said. Emily turned. What's that? Lisa unzipped the bag, revealing a long, fitted gown of deep emerald silk. Designed by a friend of mine. The color means rebirth. You'll wear this to the gala. Emily brushed her fingers over the fabric. It's beautiful. Lisa smiled. So are you. You just forgot. They spent the morning preparing, but not just with clothes. Emily's makeover was more than appearance. It was armor. Lisa called in a makeup artist she trusted from a past Vogue shoot, a quiet woman named Sophia who worked with precision. We're not changing you, Sophia said as she began to work. We're reminding the world who you are. As Sophia brushed foundation across Emily's skin, Lisa opened her laptop and reviewed the plan once more. The files are encrypted and ready, she said. At exactly 9 p.m., the Beverly Times will receive everything. The story will go live 15 minutes later. Emily nodded, eyes focused on her reflection. And I'll already be there. Sophia stepped back, smiling. You're done. Emily stood, hardly recognizing herself. Her hair cascaded in soft waves, her lips painted a muted red, her eyes lined in quiet defiance. She wasn't the woman abandoned in the snow anymore. She was the woman who had survived it. Lisa clapped her hands. Perfect. But we still need one last detail. She opened a small velvet box and held up a pair of earrings. Simple diamond drops. Tiffany, you'll look powerful, not pitied. Emily hesitated. They're too much. Lisa laughed. Exactly. Let them choke on it. They both laughed softly, but the air beneath their laughter carried weight. Tomorrow night would change everything. As the day turned to evening, Emily returned to her house for the first time since Christmas. The once luxurious space felt smaller now, emptied of illusion. She moved through the rooms quietly, touching each surface one last time. The framed wedding photo, the baby's crib, the bracelet that still read forever, J&E. She placed the bracelet inside a drawer and closed it gently. That forever's over, she whispered. In her office, she opened her laptop and rehearsed her speech. Short, sharp, and impossible to ignore. She wouldn't shout, she wouldn't cry. She would simply stand, calm and radiant, as the truth detonated behind her like fireworks. That night, she fell asleep earlier than she had in weeks, her phone buzzing quietly beside her. A text from Lisa read, "Tomorrow, we burn the old world." Morning came bright and still. Emily woke before sunrise and made herself a cup of Starbucks coffee. The same drink she'd sipped every morning back when her life was ordinary. It tasted different now. Stronger. She spent the day preparing the smallest details. The dress steamed, the earrings polished, the press invitation tucked in her clutch. She printed one photo and slid it into the envelope, the viral image of herself standing in the snow. It would remind her what she'd endured to reach this moment. When the evening light began to fade, Emily looked at her reflection one last time. Her emerald gown shimmered under the golden glow. She fastened the earrings, picked up her clutch, and whispered to her reflection, "Let's finish this." Outside, a limousine waited at the curb. As she stepped in, the city lights reflected across the tinted glass, like stars bowing before their new constellation. The night sky above Beverly Hills shimmered like black silk sprinkled with gold. It was New Year's Eve, the night the city's elite gathered beneath chandeliers and champagne towers at the Ritz-Carlton for the Langford Foundation Gala. Luxury cars glided up the circular drive, cameras flashed, and laughter sparkled louder than the orchestra inside. A black limousine rolled to a stop near the entrance. The driver stepped out and opened the door. From the shadows a woman emerged. Her emerald gown glowed under the lights, flowing around her like liquid power. Every movement was graceful, deliberate. The crowd turned and the photographer's lenses clicked wildly. Emily Carter had arrived. The same woman who'd stood barefoot in the snow a week ago now walked with her head high, each step echoing across marble. The doorman recognized her instantly, the woman from that viral photo. But now she looked untouchable, almost regal. Inside, the ballroom glittered with opulence. Golden curtains framed the stage, a jazz band played softly, and waiters carried trays of champagne. At the center of it all stood Victoria Langford, wrapped in a silver gown that reflected every flash of light. Her smile was perfect, rehearsed, lethal. Beside her was Jonathan Mills, dressed in a midnight black tuxedo, his arm casually resting at Victoria's waist. They looked like royalty, or at least they wanted to. Jonathan turned toward the crowd, shaking hands, unaware that his past had just walked through the same doors. From across the room, Lisa Nguyen watched Emily enter. She gave a discreet nod, the signal that the Beverly Times had received the files. The clock read 8:57 p.m., 3 minutes until the leak went public. Emily scanned the room, every heartbeat steady. Her emerald dress shimmered beneath the chandeliers. The diamonds in her earrings caught the light like small bursts of lightning. Conversations faltered as eyes followed her. The whispers began. "Is that her?" "That's Jonathan's wife. She looks incredible." She smiled faintly. "Let them talk." Jonathan turned then and froze. For a brief moment, time stopped. His confident smirk faded, replaced by disbelief. "Emily?" he muttered under his breath. Victoria followed his gaze, her smile faltering. "Who is that?" He swallowed hard. "My wife." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Ex-wife, you mean?" But Emily didn't approach them. Not yet. She let them feel her presence like a storm gathering on the horizon. She moved toward the bar, nodding politely at people who once ignored her, her voice calm as she ordered sparkling water. Every camera in the room turned to follow. Lisa slipped beside her, whispering, "It's live, the story just broke. Langford Capital is trending worldwide." Emily took a slow sip, eyes locked on the stage where Victoria was about to make her speech. "Good," she said quietly. "Let's see how honest her toast is." At exactly 9:15, Victoria took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice warm, controlled. "Tonight, we celebrate the future, new ventures, new partnerships, and the unstoppable spirit of innovation." Her words were drowned out by the faint buzz of phones vibrating across the room. Guests began to murmur, scrolling through notifications. A ripple of confusion swept through the ballroom. Someone gasped. Another whispered, "This can't be real." On the giant screen behind the stage, a headline appeared, "Unplanned, Unstoppable." Breaking: Langford Capital under investigation for fraud and insider trading. Beneath it, photos and documents appeared, emails, contracts, and signatures. Jonathan's face drained of color. Victoria's hand trembled around the microphone. This is a mistake," she stammered. Emily stepped forward then, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown. The crowd parted as she approached the stage. Every camera turned toward her, flashes bursting like fireworks. She stopped at the foot of the platform, eyes meeting Jonathan's. "You always said success was about timing," she said softly. "Looks like mine was perfect." The room erupted in whispers. Jonathan tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Victoria dropped the microphone, fury flashing across her perfect face. Emily turned, calm and radiant under the golden lights. For the first time she didn't feel broken, she felt free. As the countdown to midnight began, the world watched not Victoria Langford, but Emily Carter, the woman who rose from betrayal and took back her power under 1,000 flashing lights. The ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton descended into chaos. Phones flashed, voices rose, and reporters from every major outlet flooded social media with breaking updates. What had been a night of celebration turned into a battlefield of reputations. The air thickened with panic and the faint scent of perfume and deceit. On the massive screen, documents continued to scroll. Proof of insider trading, offshore accounts, fraudulent transfers, all tied directly to Langford Capital. Each revelation struck like thunder. Victoria Langford's empire, built on glitter and manipulation, was cracking in real time. Jonathan Mills stood frozen near the stage, his face pale, his confidence shattered. He tried to grab Victoria's arm. "We can fix this," he whispered. Victoria jerked away, her voice sharp. "You fool! You let this happen." Jonathan blinked. "What are you talking about? You're the one who—" She cut him off, fury trembling in her words. "Don't you dare pin this on me, Jonathan. You are the signature on every document. You're the one they'll come after." Cameras zoomed in, catching every heated word. Guests whispered, recording, tweeting, watching an empire burn. Emily Carter stood a few feet away, her expression unreadable. She hadn't come to gloat. She had come for closure. Still, when she saw Jonathan's panic, something inside her felt both heavy and light. Heavy with the pain he'd caused, light with the freedom that followed. Lisa Nguyen appeared beside her, phone in hand. "It's done," she murmured. "The Times confirmed the story. Federal investigators are already moving. Victoria won't escape this one." Emily nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the stage. "And Jonathan?" Lisa sighed. "He'll go down with her, unless he cooperates. Either way, he's finished." Across the ballroom, security guards and event staff tried to calm the crowd. Victoria grabbed the microphone again, her voice rising above the noise. "Everyone, please remain calm. These accusations are false." But her trembling hands betrayed her. A photographer shouted, "Miss Langford, are the emails real? Did you falsify investment reports?" Flashes erupted. Victoria's mask cracked. "No comment," she snapped, turning away. Jonathan tried to follow her off stage, but two men in suits approached him. Investigators, badges discreetly shown. His steps faltered. One of them said quietly, "Mr. Mills, we need to ask you a few questions." He turned toward Emily then, desperation in his eyes. "Emily, please. You don't understand. I didn't know she'd take it this far." Emily's voice was calm, almost tender. "You knew enough. You just didn't care until it touched you." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "You left me in the snow," she said softly. "Now you can stand in your own storm." Jonathan's shoulders sagged. He looked around for Victoria, but she was already gone, escorted through a side exit, her empire collapsing behind her. Lisa touched Emily's arm. "We should go before the press swarms you." Emily nodded. Together they walked toward the exit. Guests parted again, some whispering admiration, others awe. The woman who had once been humiliated now walked with the quiet grace of victory. Outside, the air was cool and still. The fireworks above Beverly Hills began early, bursts of color painting the night sky. Emily paused at the edge of the valet circle, watching the lights reflect off the hotel windows. Lisa exhaled. "You did it." Emily smiled faintly. "We did it." For a long moment she just stood there, letting the noise fade behind her. The chaos, the lies, the betrayal, it all felt distant now, like a bad dream she had finally awakened from. Her phone buzzed. A notification popped up. Hack Emily Carter trends worldwide, the woman who took back her power. She turned the screen off and slipped it into her clutch. "I don't need the world to know," she whispered. "I just needed to remember who I was." Lisa smiled, linking arms with her. "Then let's start your next chapter." Behind them, the Ritz-Carlton glowed like a burning crown, an empire crumbling, a queen rising from the ashes. By dawn, Beverly Hills was quiet again. The chaos from the night before had faded into headlines and whispers. The Ritz-Carlton, once glowing like a jewel, stood silent under a gray morning sky. Inside the lobby, reporters still lingered, waiting for statements that would never come. Emily Carter was long gone. She sat by the window of a small suite at the Peninsula Hotel, wrapped in a soft robe, watching the city wake. Steam curled from the cup of black coffee in her hands. For the first time in months, her mind wasn't racing. The air felt still, clean, almost sacred. Her phone buzzed on the table. Hundreds of unread messages, missed calls, interview requests, and offers. Her name was everywhere. The pregnant wife who brought down Langford Capital. But she didn't open any of them. She had no interest in fame. All she wanted was peace. Lisa Nguyen knocked gently and entered, holding 2 croissants from the cafe downstairs. "Morning, hero," she said, smiling. Emily laughed softly. "Don't call me that." "You earned it," Lisa said, sitting beside her. "You didn't just survive, you dismantled a dynasty." Emily took a bite of the croissant, savoring the quiet. "It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like release." Lisa nodded. "That's what freedom feels like." They ate in silence for a while, the sunlight slipping through the curtains, soft and golden. Then Emily asked, "What happened after we left?" Lisa opened her laptop and scrolled through the morning's news. Victoria Langford was taken in for questioning before sunrise. The SEC froze her accounts. Jonathan's been subpoenaed. The story's everywhere. She turned the screen toward Emily. "You should see this." On the front page of the Beverly Times was a photo of Emily walking out of the gala, head high, emerald gown flowing like armor. The headline read, "Grace Under Fire, Emily Carter's Poised Exit After Exposing Corruption." Emily stared at it for a long moment, then shut the laptop gently. "I don't want to be defined by what they did to me." Lisa smiled faintly. "Then define yourself by what you do next." Later that afternoon, Emily took a slow walk through Central Park West, her favorite spot from her New York days. She'd flown back early, craving the simplicity of the city that had once made her dream. Snow covered the benches, children laughed near the frozen pond, and somewhere nearby, a street musician played Auld Lang Syne on a violin. She stopped by a bench and sat down, her hand resting on her belly. The baby kicked softly, as if agreeing with the rhythm of the city. Her phone buzzed again, this time a message from an unknown number. "Emily, it's Michael Turner. I read your story. I'd like to meet. I believe we could build something new together, professionally and maybe beyond that." She stared at the message, surprised. Michael Turner, the Manhattan tech entrepreneur who'd once reached out for consulting months before she left her job. Back then, she'd been too distracted by Jonathan to respond. Now she smiled. "Maybe timing really is everything," she murmured. She didn't reply immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes and breathed in the cold air. For once, she wasn't rushing. The world could wait. When evening fell, she returned to her suite and began writing, just for herself. No headlines, no revenge, just her story in her own words. The title on the first page, "The Woman Who Stood in the Snow." She wrote until midnight, the city glowing outside her window. Each word felt lighter, like she was shedding the last fragments of pain. As the clock struck 12, fireworks erupted over the skyline. Emily set down her pen, hand resting on her belly again. "We made it," she whispered. The baby kicked once more, as if to answer, and for the first time since that Christmas night, Emily Carter smiled. Not because she won, but because she was finally free. 3 weeks passed since the night the world watched Langford Capital collapse. Winter softened into a pale January, and Manhattan's skyline sparkled beneath a pale sun. Emily Carter had moved into a modest but elegant apartment overlooking Central Park. It wasn't the penthouse she once shared in Beverly Hills, but it was hers, quiet, warm, and filled with peace. Each morning began the same. The smell of fresh coffee, soft jazz playing from her Bluetooth speaker, and her growing belly gently reminding her of what mattered most. She had started consulting again, working remotely for small tech startups who valued her intelligence rather than her husband's name. Her inbox was full of opportunities. Her heart, still healing, finally felt steady. But that morning, as she checked her emails, one name caught her attention again: Michael Turner. She hesitated before opening it. His message was simple: "If you're in New York, I'd still love to meet. Coffee, nothing more. No reporters, no business pitches, just 2 people starting over." Something about his tone, calm, genuine, patient, made her smile. That afternoon, she met him at a quiet cafe in Soho, tucked between an art gallery and a bookstore. Snowflakes drifted outside the windows, and the smell of espresso filled the room. Michael Turner stood when she walked in, He was taller than she remembered from his LinkedIn photo, broad-shouldered, kind eyes, no trace of arrogance. He wore a dark navy coat and a simple silver watch, nothing flashy. "Emily," he said, smiling warmly. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't," she admitted, removing her gloves. "I'm still learning to trust people again." He nodded. "That's fair. I'm not here to fix anything, just to talk." They sat across from each other, 2 cups of coffee between them. Conversation came easily, surprisingly so. He didn't ask about Jonathan or the scandal. Instead, he asked about her work, her favorite books, the baby's due date. When she mentioned reading Women Who Run with the Wolves, his face lit up. "That book saved me after my divorce," he said. "Taught me that endings aren't failures, they're directions." Emily smiled. Genuinely this time. Maybe that's what this is, a direction. As they talked, the afternoon light faded into gold. Outside, the city moved like a living thing. Taxis, snow, people chasing their own beginnings. Inside, time seemed to slow. When they finished their coffees, Michael stood and offered his hand. "Let me walk you home. Just because the city looks peaceful doesn't mean it is." Emily hesitated but then nodded. The walk was quiet, comfortable. They spoke about small things, music, favorite streets, how the air in New York always smelled faintly like possibility. When they reached her building, she turned to thank him. "You didn't have to," she said. "I wanted to," he replied simply. "And for what it's worth, you seem stronger than anyone I've ever met." His words lingered in the cold air. For a long second, she just looked at him, wondering when kindness had started to feel foreign. "Thank you," she whispered. He smiled, nodded, and stepped back. "Good night, Emily. Take care of yourself." She watched him disappear down the street, his silhouette blending into the glow of the city lights. Something in her chest fluttered, not romance yet, but recognition. The quiet kind of connection that doesn't demand, only understands. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She stood by her window, looking at the skyline. The city that once broke her was now holding her gently. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't terrify her. It called to her. She whispered into the night, "Maybe love isn't about rescue. Maybe it's about peace." And somewhere across the city, Michael smiled at his phone, reading her message. Coffee again soon? The new beginning had quietly begun. By February, Manhattan had thawed just enough for the sidewalks to glisten instead of freeze. Emily Carter found herself walking through the streets again, no longer hiding behind scarves or sunglasses. The scandal had faded from headlines. People had moved on. But for Emily, the silence that followed wasn't emptiness. It was healing. Every week she met Michael Turner for coffee. Sometimes at the same Soho cafe, sometimes at the bookstore near Bryant Park, sometimes simply to walk in Central Park with warm cups in their hands. There was no pretense, no pressure. Michael never mentioned her past unless she brought it up, and even then he only listened, really listened. He had a quiet strength about him, a steadiness that made her feel safe. Once she'd believed love was about fireworks and passion. Now she was learning it could also be about peace, the calm of 2 people sitting together without needing to fill every silence. One chilly afternoon, as they sat by the window at their usual cafe, Michael asked softly, "Do you ever think about going back to work full-time?" Emily smiled. "Every day. But this time, it'll be on my own terms. Lisa and I are starting a consulting agency, helping women-owned startups build brand strategy. No corporate games, no middlemen," he grinned. "I'd invest in that." She laughed. "You say that like a businessman." "I am one," he teased. "But more than that, I believe in people who rebuild." Their eyes met, and something wordless passed between them, a flicker of connection both new and familiar. Emily looked away first, her heart racing. She hadn't felt this way in years, safe enough to hope again. Over the next weeks, their meetings turned into dinners. Michael cooked at his loft in Tribeca, all stainless steel and warm lighting. He played old jazz records, poured red wine, and always made sure to include something sweet for dessert because, as he said, healing always needs a little sugar. One night, as snow dusted the windows, Emily helped him wash dishes. Their hands brushed over the running water, and she froze, unsure. Michael noticed and stopped. "Hey," he said gently, his eyes soft, "you don't owe me anything. We move at your pace." Something in her chest loosened. She nodded. "Thank you. It's been a long time since someone cared without asking for something back." Michael smiled. That's not care, that's control. What you deserve is choice. After that night, the air between them changed, not heavier, but deeper. They didn't rush into romance, they let it grow, like spring thawing the last of winter. By March, Emily's belly had grown round and strong. She invited Michael to one of her doctor's appointments. He waited quietly in the lobby, reading Atomic Habits on his Kindle, until she came out smiling. "The baby's perfect," she said, her voice glowing with relief. He grinned. "Just like the mother." She laughed. "You're biased." "Completely." When they left the clinic, snow began to fall again, soft, harmless flakes that melted as soon as they touched the ground. Michael offered his hand as they walked. She hesitated for half a heartbeat, then took it. Their fingers intertwined naturally, no promises, just understanding. As they crossed Fifth Avenue, Emily looked up at the gray sky and realized she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of love, not of loss, not of life. Back at her apartment, she wrote in her journal before bed, "Love isn't finding someone to catch you. It's finding someone who helps you stand taller." She smiled as her phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "Dinner tomorrow? I found a place with the best pie in the city." She typed back, "Only if it's cherry." And for the first time since the snow, Emily laughed, not out of relief, but out of joy. Spring arrived quietly in Manhattan. Cherry blossoms opened along the park paths, and for the first time in a long while, Emily Carter could walk without feeling the weight of her past on her shoulders. Her world was small but whole. Morning walks, work calls with Lisa, dinners with Michael. Peace had replaced the chaos that once ruled her life. But peace, she would learn, has a way of being tested. It happened on an ordinary Friday. Emily was leaving her new office on Park Avenue, her laptop tucked under one arm, when she heard a voice she hadn't heard in months. "Emily." The sound froze her mid-step. She turned, heart thudding. Jonathan Mills stood a few feet away, wearing a wrinkled gray suit and the kind of exhaustion money couldn't hide. He looked older, thinner. The confidence that once radiated from him was gone, replaced by something almost human, regret. For a moment, neither spoke. The city moved around them, horns blaring, people brushing past, but time itself seemed to hold its breath. Emily finally said, "You shouldn't be here." Jonathan took a hesitant step closer. "I needed to see you." She crossed her arms. "The last time I saw you, you were on stage with Victoria Langford while the world fell apart." His eyes flickered with shame. "I know. I lost everything, Emily. The house, the company, the investors, gone. Victoria turned on me the moment the story broke. She said I was the mastermind. They're still investigating. I have nothing." Emily stared at him, searching for emotion. She expected anger, maybe pity. But all she felt was distance. The man before her was no longer her husband, just a stranger wearing his face. "You have nothing," she repeated quietly. "That's interesting, because you once had everything. Love, loyalty, a child on the way, and you threw it all away." Jonathan's voice cracked. "I made a mistake. I thought success would make me matter. But when it all collapsed, I realized you were the only real thing I ever had." Emily felt a lump in her throat but forced herself to stay calm. "Regret isn't love, Jonathan. It's fear wearing a disguise." He stepped closer, his voice trembling. "I don't want money or forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry. I saw your interview last week. Empowered women in business. You were incredible. You deserve every bit of success. I needed you to know that I see it now." She looked down at her hand, resting gently on her stomach. "You're not part of this story anymore. The baby and I, we're fine. We're moving forward." Jonathan's eyes softened. "You're really having the baby?" "Yes," she said, "and I'm doing it on my own." He nodded slowly, tears glinting in his eyes. "Then I hope you both have the life I was too blind to give you." For a brief second, she saw the man she'd once loved, ambitious, flawed, but human. But the moment passed like wind through a doorway. Emily stepped back. "Goodbye, Jonathan." He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. The noise of the city swallowed his words. He nodded once, turned, and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Emily stood there, breathing in the spring air. Her hands trembled, not from pain, but from release. The chapter had truly closed. Her phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "Still on for dinner tonight?" She smiled, typing back, "Yes, and thank you for waiting for me to be ready." As she walked toward the subway, the city lights flickered on one by one. Somewhere far behind her, Jonathan turned a corner and vanished from her life for good. And in that moment, Emily realized forgiveness didn't mean opening the door again. It meant finally closing it without hate. Summer came early that year. Manhattan bloomed with color, the park alive with laughter, and the air warm enough to carry the scent of magnolias through open windows. In a quiet corner apartment overlooking Central Park, Emily Carter packed her hospital bag. Her belly was round, her steps slower, but her heart had never been stronger. Michael Turner moved carefully through the living room, double-checking everything. Phone chargers, baby clothes, water bottles. "You sure you're okay?" he asked, trying not to sound nervous. Emily smiled, resting a hand on his arm. "You've asked me that 12 times in an hour." He grinned sheepishly. "I just want everything to be perfect." "It will be," she said softly, "because we're ready." That night, as thunder rolled over the city, Emily's contractions began. At first they were small waves, gentle but insistent. By midnight, they grew stronger. Michael drove her to Mount Sinai Hospital through rain-slick streets, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his voice calm even as his heart raced. When they arrived, nurses rushed to guide Emily into a private suite. The walls were soft beige, the lights dimmed low. Michael stayed beside her, holding her hand through every contraction, whispering encouragement. Between the pain and the breathing, Emily caught glimpses of the man beside her, the patience in his eyes, the steadiness of his touch. Hours passed like minutes. The clock on the wall read 4:13 a.m. when the doctor said, "It's time." Emily's strength was tested in ways she didn't know existed. Sweat beaded her forehead, tears stung her eyes, but she didn't break. With every push, she remembered every night she had survived, every storm she had walked through alone. And then in one final breath, the sound filled the room, a sharp, pure cry that cut through everything. Her baby had arrived. A nurse placed a tiny bundle against her chest. Emily looked down and felt her world collapse and rebuild all at once. The baby's skin was soft, warm, alive with possibility. Tiny fingers wrapped around her own. "It's a girl," the doctor said with a smile. Emily laughed through her tears. "She's perfect." Michael stood nearby, his eyes glistening. "She really is," he whispered. "You did it?" Emily looked up at him, her voice trembling. "We did it." For a long time, the room was quiet except for the gentle sound of their daughter breathing. Emily traced her tiny face with her fingertips, memorizing every curve. She thought about the woman she'd been, the one standing barefoot in the snow, heart shattered, and the woman she'd become, stronger, softer, free. When dawn broke, sunlight spilled through the blinds, painting the room gold. The nurse wrote the baby's name on a small card. "Hope Carter." Emily smiled. "Because she is." Michael brought her a cup of warm tea, sitting beside her on the bed. "You know," he said, "when she grows up, she's going to know what strength looks like." Emily looked down at her daughter. "She already does. She's been watching it from the inside." They both laughed quietly. Outside, the city stirred awake. Life moved forward. Taxis honking, birds calling, the rhythm of Manhattan resuming its endless dance. But in that small hospital room, time seemed to pause just for them. Emily kissed her daughter's forehead. "Welcome to the world, Hope," she whispered. "You were born from heartbreak, but you'll live in love." Michael leaned closer, wrapping an arm around them both. Together, they watched the sunrise stretch across the skyline. And in that moment, Emily Carter knew her story had come full circle. The snow had melted, the silence had ended, and hope had finally found its voice. 6 months after Hope's birth, Manhattan pulsed with summer heat and golden light. The skyline shimmered against a cloudless sky, the kind of day that made everything seem possible. Emily Carter walked along the path in Central Park. Her daughter nestled against her chest in a soft baby carrier, tiny fingers clutching the fabric of her blouse. The park was alive. Joggers, street musicians, children chasing bubbles that floated like dreams through the air. Emily smiled as a breeze brushed her face. The sound of Hope's soft breathing steadied her heart. Every step felt like a promise to herself. Peace, not survival. They stopped near a bench shaded by oak trees. Michael Turner was already there, 2 coffees and a paper bag from a bakery beside him. He stood as soon as he saw them. "There's my favorite duo," he said, his grin easy, warm. Emily laughed. "You're spoiling us." "That's the plan." He handed her an iced coffee, kissed Hope gently on the head, and sat beside them. "How's my little partner in crime today?" "She slept for 4 straight hours," Emily said proudly. That's a record. Michael chuckled. That's better than I do most nights. They watched the park for a while, sunlight flickering through the leaves. Emily's eyes softened as she looked at him. This man who had entered her life when it was still in pieces, who never asked her to be anyone but herself. He didn't try to fill the silence. He simply shared it. I've been thinking, she said finally, about everything that's happened, about how different life looks now. Michael tilted his head. Different good or different bad? Different miraculous, she said softly. I used to measure happiness by perfection. The house, the marriage, the image. But real happiness, it's this. Mornings that smell like coffee and baby lotion. People who stay without being asked. He smiled. You make simple sound like magic. It is, she replied. A few feet away, a street artist was sketching portraits. Michael nodded toward him. Let's get one done. A picture of all three of us. Emily hesitated. You sure? Absolutely, he said. You deserve to see what joy looks like from the outside. They sat together on the bench while the artist drew. Hope slept peacefully in Emily's arms, her tiny face turned toward the sunlight. Michael's arm rested behind Emily, not possessive, just present. The artist worked quietly, glancing up every few minutes. When he finished, he handed over the sketch with a smile. Emily looked at it, and her breath caught. The drawing captured more than faces. It showed warmth, trust, a quiet unity that words couldn't touch. It's beautiful, she whispered. Michael studied it, then looked at her. So are you. She laughed, blushing. You never stop saying that. I never will, he said simply. Later that evening, back at her apartment, Emily pinned the sketch to the wall above her desk. Beside it hung a framed photo, the viral picture from that snowy Christmas Eve. The two images, side by side, told the story better than words ever could. From snow to sunlight, from loss to life. She rocked Hope gently to sleep, humming under her breath. When the baby's eyes finally closed, Emily whispered, You changed everything, little one. You made room for joy. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lisa. Just saw your segment on Forbes Women. You're glowing, boss lady. Proud of you. Emily smiled, typing back one word, thanks. Then she looked out the window at the skyline, glowing under the twilight. Michael's words echoed in her mind. You deserve to see what joy looks like from the outside. She finally understood. This wasn't just a second chance at happiness. It was the first time she'd ever truly lived. And as the city lights blinked awake, Emily Carter closed her eyes, her heart full, her world finally at peace. By late autumn, Manhattan shimmered beneath a sky of silver clouds. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts and turning leaves, and Emily Carter's life had finally settled into rhythm. Her consulting firm with Lisa was thriving. Hope was nearly 10 months old, curious and bright, and Michael Turner had become a steady presence, not a savior, but a partner. For the first time in years, Emily felt like the ground beneath her feet belonged to her. But peace has a fragile way of being tested, especially when the ghosts of the past refuse to stay buried. It began with a single email. Emily was in her office reviewing a client proposal when the subject line caught her eye. Urgent, private matter, V. Langford. Her breath hitched. She hadn't heard that name in nearly a year. Against her better judgment, she clicked. The message was short. Emily, I need to see you, please. It's important. One meeting, no reporters, no lawyers. You owe me that much, Victoria. Emily leaned back in her chair, heart pounding. Owe her? The woman who'd destroyed her marriage, nearly ruined her life? She almost deleted it on instinct, but something in her gut told her not to. Instead, she forwarded it to Lisa. Minutes later, Lisa called. You are not going to that meeting. I'm not planning to, Emily said, staring out the window at the city skyline. But doesn't it bother you? Why now? Because she's cornered, Lisa replied. Her trial's coming up. She probably wants sympathy or a deal. Emily sighed. Maybe closure. Lisa's tone softened. You already got that, Em. Don't give her a second of your peace. But that night, Emily couldn't shake the unease. She sat in her living room, Hope asleep nearby, the lights dim. Michael noticed the distance in her eyes. You're thinking about her, he said quietly. Emily nodded. She emailed me, wants to meet. He studied her face. And what do you want? I want her gone from my head, Emily admitted. But maybe the only way to do that is to look her in the eye and end it myself. Michael hesitated, then said, If you go, you're not going alone. 2 days later, Emily walked into a cafe near Bryant Park, the one Victoria had chosen. Michael waited in a car outside, watching through the glass. Victoria Langford sat at a corner table, her trademark perfection dimmed but not gone. She looked smaller somehow, fragile in her tailored gray coat. When she saw Emily, her lips curved in a half-smile. "You came." "I'm not here for you," Emily said calmly. "Say what you need to say." Victoria exhaled, her composure wavering. "You won. You got your happy ending. But you don't understand. Jonathan betrayed me too. He leaked files to the feds. I lost everything." Emily's expression didn't change. "You lost what wasn't yours to begin with." Victoria's eyes glimmered. "Do you think you're innocent? You used what you found to destroy me." "I exposed the truth," Emily said simply. "You destroyed yourself." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then Victoria whispered, "You're stronger than I thought." Emily leaned forward. "No, I'm just done being afraid of women like you." Victoria looked down, her fingers trembling. "They'll sentence me next month. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you, I envy you. You rebuilt. I can't." Emily stood, her voice steady. "That's because you built your life on power. I built mine on peace." Victoria didn't look up as Emily turned and walked out into the crisp afternoon air. Outside, Michael stepped out of the car. "You okay?" Emily nodded slowly, her breath visible in the cold. "She's not my story anymore." He smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "Then let's go home." As they walked away, the first snow of the season began to fall. Soft, silent, cleansing. And for the first time, the snow didn't remind Emily of pain. It reminded her of how far she had come. 10 years later, Manhattan still hummed with its familiar rhythm. Honking cabs, flashing lights, the endless rush of ambition. But for Emily Carter, time had softened the city's sharp edges. The skyline that once symbolized heartbreak now shimmered with peace, a reflection of the life she had built from the ashes. Her daughter, Hope Carter, was 10 years old now, yet a whirlwind of laughter and curiosity. She had her mother's hazel eyes, Michael Turner's patience, and a strength all her own. Every morning, she sat at the kitchen island with her backpack half-zipped, eating cereal while humming the same tune Emily used to sing to her as a baby. Michael, now her husband, entered the room, still wearing his running jacket. "You've got 5 minutes before the school bus," he said, pretending to be stern. Hope giggled. "I'm ready." "Mom's the one who's slow." Emily looked up from the table, smiling over her laptop. "Excuse me? I've been ready since before you were born." "Not true," Michael teased. "You were 2 hours late to the hospital." They laughed, a sound that filled the apartment like sunlight. It wasn't perfection, but it was peace. The kind built through love, forgiveness, and the passage of time. After breakfast, they walked Hope downstairs. The morning air was crisp, the streets shimmering after an early rain. Before getting on the bus, Hope turned to her mother and said, "Mom, can I take your book for show and tell today? The one about women starting over?" Emily hesitated, surprised. "You mean the woman who stood in the snow?" Hope nodded eagerly. "Yeah, my teacher said we should bring something that reminds us of courage." Michael smiled at his wife. "She's her mother's daughter." Emily's heart swelled. "Of course, sweetheart. Just be careful with it." As the bus drove away, Emily stood on the sidewalk, watching the little figure of her daughter wave through the window until it disappeared around the corner. Later that day, she met Lisa Nguyen for lunch at a cozy cafe near Bryant Park, the same place where, years ago, they'd planned their revenge and rebirth. Lisa's hair was streaked with gray now, but her eyes sparkled just the same. "So," Lisa said, sipping her cappuccino, "Forbes called again. They want another feature on women entrepreneurs. You in?" Emily chuckled. "Lisa, I haven't done interviews in years. I like the quiet." "You say that," Lisa teased, "but you're the quiet storm that changed an entire industry." Emily shook her head, smiling. "I didn't change anything. I just stopped apologizing for surviving." As they left the cafe, a young woman approached Emily. "Excuse me," she said shyly. "Are you Emily Carter? You spoke at Columbia last year. Your story helped me leave a toxic partnership. I just wanted to say thank you." Emily smiled warmly. "I'm glad you did what was right for you." The woman beamed and walked away. Lisa nudged her. "See? Legacy." That evening, back home, Emily tucked Hope into bed. The city lights shimmered through the curtains. Hope held the worn copy of her mother's book, her little fingers tracing the cover. "Mom," she whispered, "is the woman in the snow really you?" Emily smiled softly. Yes, baby, that was me a long time ago. Were you scared? Emily thought for a moment. Yes, but I learned something important, that being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you keep walking, even when you are. Hope nodded sleepily. I'll be brave too. I know you will, Emily whispered, kissing her forehead. You already are. She turned off the lamp and stood by the window, looking out at the city that had witnessed her fall, her fight, and her rise. Snow began to drift down again, soft, quiet, forgiving. And as Emily watched her daughter dream beneath the glow of the skyline, she knew her story had come full circle. From betrayal to love, from silence to legacy, her strength would live on in the little girl named Hope. So that's it. Our story has finally come full circle. Emily's journey from heartbreak to healing, from the cold snow to the warmth of new beginnings, reminds us that no pain is ever wasted. Maybe you're still here, listening to this moment, because something about her story touched your heart too. And if it did, maybe it's because you've been standing in your own kind of snow once. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "The obstacle is the way." Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every loss is not the end. It's the beginning of who we are becoming. Like Emily, we don't find strength in avoiding pain, but in walking through it with grace. Healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means transforming the hurt into wisdom, the fear into peace, and the silence into a new voice. So my friend, if this story made you feel something, hope, courage, maybe a little fire in your chest, then don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. You never know who might need to hear this today. Sometimes the right story at the right moment can be the spark that helps someone else rise again.